And away we go. It's just me at the moment. Not sure if Eric or Risk are going to join, but if not, I'm gonna go ahead with the episode anyway. And also, don't be a penny snatcher. They may be valuable, but they're not worth it, especially in the next few years. But uh, at some point, we'll get to that story in a few weeks, maybe a year or two. But let's discuss what's actually going on right now. Well, 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 isn't that convenient? But convicted him on counts related to transporting individuals for prostitution. That's just nasty. The verdict followed a 7-week trial and 3 days of jury deliberations addressing charges including racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation of sex workers across state lines. Combs was found guilty on transporting his girlfriends and compensated male escorts across states for the purpose of sexual activities, violating the Federal Mann Act, while being found not guilty of charges related to coercing his girlfriends into drug-fueled group sex sessions. The jury of 8 men and 4 women reported unpersuadable opinions on both sides, prevented a unanimous racketeering verdict where conviction could have meant a life sentence, and sex trafficking carried a 15-year minimum. The mixed verdict means Combs, 55, faces up to 10 years for transportation charges, but is cleared of more severe accusations, which likely affects his future as a music executive and entrepreneur. Well, I can't say I'm not surprised, but what I can say, I'm not that shocked either. Given this man's wealth, influence, and connections, never forget, there's always a way out, so long as someone has enough money, especially the man himself. So a lot of people wanted something to happen, especially against Diddy for sure. However, in life, or in the world today, nothing is ever going to go our way, or anyone's way. It's always going to work out to the man or woman with the most money, and the connections, and the influence. If you don't have any of those three, then you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. That's how the world is. Is there a way to change it? Yeah, yeah, of course there's a way to change it. There is a way to change it, but it's going to come with a massive price. There's a bigger cost than most people think. And unfortunately, there are going to be some people that are going to be offended by that. It's not that deep. Anyone can do it. You just got to get started. But that's just me, and also sidetracking on another topic. But nonetheless, there has to be a way to provide and serve the justice that is deserved. If not, well, all we can do is get on with our lives and make sure we have as much financial freedom as we so please. It won't come easy, but it is possible. It's going to take enough sweat, maybe a bit of blood. Just don't drink it. Please, do not drink it. Anyway, it's going to take a lot of hard work to get to where you want to be. And there was something else I was going to say. Oh yes, eventually in the next few years, all of the hard work you put in will pay off, and you can just live life however you like, at least legally. Don't think you're above the law or something. Like, you will learn the hard way. There have been people that went to jail for that. I'm not specifying anything. I'm just making a point. Just because you're big, almighty, or whatever, doesn't mean you're above the law. And that's about it. Look In Coffee opened its first 2 stores in the United States on Monday, marking its entry into the competitive American coffee market. The new locations are in Manhattan's Greenwich Village and Nomad neighborhood. The Look In Coffee offers cashless payments and takeout booths, with drinks priced about 30% cheaper than Starbucks. The company features cold brews and hot coffee options, similar to Starbucks, and has hired a new CFO. I've heard about Luckin Coffee a couple of years ago, and when I've heard about them, it's actually pretty good. I haven't tried them, I haven't drank any of their coffee, but what I've heard about them a few years ago, I feel there's potential. And seeing that they've opened the first few stores in the United States, I feel from that point on, the only direction they'll go is up. Not just financially, but in terms of sales and of course reputation and popularity. And yeah, 30% cheaper than Starbucks. I mean, prices as it is today are just bad enough as it is. So surely, for those who are at least uh, stingy with their money, I think Luckin Coffee is the way to go and the place to be. Remember, this is only the beginning. We're not too sure what's going to happen next with Luckin Coffee, especially the Orange Man in charge, trying to bring whatever tariffs or call out some bigger nation. But hey, that's just me. I'm just you always got to prepare yourself for whatever is going to happen, because you never know when any economical or financial uncertainty is going to batter, absolute batter. But yeah, hopefully Luckin Coffee does very, very well, not just in the United States, but also potentially opening new stores in other countries around the world. If it does happen in the UK, I would want to see what that's like, because when I first heard about it, it looks pretty good, very promising, high potential, and the commitment to expand and reach out to other places, pretty good, very nice. I really hope it does very well. Keep going, Luckin Coffee. Okay, Amazon deployed its 1 millionth robot in warehouses, where the robot recently arriving at a fulfillment center in Japan, as announced Monday. The milestone follows over a decade of automation investment, starting with Amazon's 2012 acquisition of Kiva Systems, which initiated the push into robotics. Amazon uses AI to improve robot efficiency through its generative model called Deep Fleet. Why does that sound familiar? And robots now assist with about 75% of the company's global deliveries. In 2024, staffing levels at each fulfillment center fell to around 670 workers, marking a 16-year low, as increasing automation with robots takes over tasks like picking, sorting, and packaging. Amazon expects further workforce reduction while claiming automation creates new skilled jobs. Though workers' advocates express concern about long-term employment impacts. Absolutely. Although AI and automation is beneficial in terms of reducing costs, what's going to happen to the humans that already have jobs there? What was going to be the point of being on this earth? What are we going to do? And I've said this a couple times before. There has to be a limit on how many tasks each week are done by AI or any other automated entities. I'm not discouraging the advancement of AI, but we can't let it take over our lives. It cannot, it should not be the replacement of human workers, rather a substitution, as well as a model to train the human workers we already have to be as efficient, if not more efficient, in their work than they currently are. So Amazon just doesn't stop growing or innovating or implementing something. Well, it just doesn't stop. Amazon just does not doing what it does best, even if people don't like it. But I don't think Amazon cares all that much, to be honest. Waffle House removes egg surcharge as prices stabilize. Waffle House, a Georgia-based breakfast chain with over 2,000 locations, announced on Tuesday it dropped its 50% egg surcharge. The surcharge added in February due to rising egg prices from a nationwide bird flu outbreak that killed tens of millions of hens caused wholesale prices to hit record highs. Egg prices peaked at $6.23 per dozen in March and began steadily dropping in spring, reaching around $2.56 by early June, prompting Waffle House to remove the surcharge. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins noted that lower egg prices are contributing to a decrease in overall food costs, providing some financial easing for families, while Waffle House shared the update on social media, calling it excellent work. Of course they were going to say that. The surcharge removal indicates price stabilization amid ongoing USDA monitoring of bird flu, though economists warn supply shocks could recur if outbreaks return. And you know what? It could return. But to what scale? And I'm not talking about whatever is the next big scare for 2025, like a potential lockdown. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but oh boy, they're really selling it to people thinking it's going to happen this year. And if some kind of outbreak does happen, it will only happen at a local scale, just to scare countries with huge populations. And then they spread the word to the world saying, oh no, there's going to be another outbreak again. But it's only a them problem, not a us problem. Us as in me and people in my country. Anyway, good for Waffle House, just removing the surcharge. The raising prices shouldn't have happened to begin with, but, well, anything's uncertain. There's so many things that's out of our control. So, yeah, it's nice to see there's progress. And some aspects of different sectors are recovering and healing from whatever damages that has happened. I'm not saying who, not just because I don't know, but if I do know, there's no one else to blame but themselves. We all make a mistake sometimes. Thousands of city workers go on strike in Philadelphia, affecting trash pickup pools and 911 calls. I feel like something like this has happened already. Just not the city where I'm from. Philadelphia's largest city workers union is on strike for the first time in nearly 40 years after contract talks failed. The union demands an 8% pay increase each year for 4 years and healthcare benefits for all employees. Mayor Sherelle Parker stated that residential trash pickup will be suspended and some pools will be closed due to the strike. Recreation centers' hours will also be reduced because of the ongoing strike. Now, last time I talked about this, there's going to be people that think I'm against the strikes and I'm against the worker union. The concern I have is, well, there's no way out of it, honestly. I can't argue that, of course, there has to be something going to the workers so they can put food on the table. Also, on the other hand, if too many people are out of work, then what's going to happen to that sector? It's either going to slow down or is it just going to pause altogether? So, of course, there has to be a balance between meeting the demands of the workers, but at the same time, there is a continuation of providing quality service and good value, of providing contribution to the economy. I know it sounds like a lot, but whatever happens, something has to be sorted. If there is ongoing issues or disputes, just sort them out. It's not worth it. And also, don't bring attention to those kind of people. Because although there are workers that still want to. I know there are workers that are committed to working, regardless of pay. But on the other hand, is the pay they're getting enough to get by with daily life? That is complicated to talk about. But nonetheless, whatever gets food on the table for these people, and they can go on about their lives stress-free, so be it. But otherwise, just to sort it out, to negotiate something so everyone lives their lives happily and we just go on with our lives. The last thing we want is division and the halting of economical progress. Not many people like it, but something has to be done to make sure everyone goes on about their lives, worry and stress-free. Jake Paul enters WBA cruiserweight rankings, making him eligible for title shot. Jake Paul defeated Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. by unanimous decision in a 10-round bout on Saturday, marking his biggest career victory. Well, they don't say. Paul transitioned from his background as a social media personality to establish himself as a professional boxer, with a 12-1 record, including 7 knockouts, earning him a recent ranking by the WBA. Following his win, Paul became ranked 14th by the World Boxing Association, making him eligible to challenge cruiserweight champion Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez. Judges scored the fight 99-91, 98-92, and 97-93 in Paul's favor, and he has publicly called out Gervonta Davis and Anthony Joshua for future bouts. Paul's WBA ranking opens a possible title shot against Ramirez and Badujak, though details of his next fights remain uncertain. Alright, 12-1. Now, I can't say that I know a lot about Jake Paul's boxing career because I don't pay attention to it, but out of the 12 wins that people are saying he has, where did those wins come from? And are those victories recognized by the WBA? I'm not calling anyone else. I'm not trying to create a gotcha moment. I'm just curious. Because again, I don't know much about the WBA. Although I know one of my mates who's into boxing. But again, still, not too sure how WBA works, what it recognizes, and what they calculate with most fighters in general. So hey, 12-1, that is pretty impressive. But nonetheless, it may be good for Jake Paul now, but he has to make sure that he doesn't lose his flow. Listen, I don't like Jake Paul that much, but if he wants to do well, which he is doing mostly well, he's got to keep that up. Consistency is the key. And in regards with the next fight, I mean, I can't argue about how he calls them out. But I mean, and this is just me. Try and be clever without calling them out. Maybe, again, I'm not too sure, but I think if there's some kind of scandal going on, maybe bring that up and make it a running gag throughout the time period that he is fighting whatever boxer he is planning to fight out of the fighters that he is likely going to fight, knowing that he is being eligible to go for the cruiserweight title. But that's all I have to say. Jake Paul's doing very well for himself, and honestly, I don't think anything's stopping him. I do think he has a chance, but this is only the beginning. Who knows what's going to happen next? Anything is possible. No one should ever let their guard down, no matter how good someone's careers get. That I will say that. 2 dead in Spain fire as heatwave scorches Europe. Spain's heatwave, driven by human-induced climate change, set record June temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius, intensifying deadly wildfires and heat-related deaths across Europe. A 2-year-old child died after being left in a parked car during Spain's heatwave, while 2 wildfire victims aged 32 and 45 were found lifeless by firefighters in Torrefita y Florejas. Again, I'm not too sure how that's pronounced. I may have butchered it, but I did my best. As fires burned over 40 kilometers. In response, Catalan authorities ordered 14,000 residents to stay indoors, urging hydration and avoiding peak heat amid storm warnings for Wednesday. Europe faces ongoing extreme heat, with Spain's highs reaching 46 degrees Celsius and IMET forecasting 41 degrees Celsius in Cordoba, as climate change accelerates regional warming at twice the global rate. Heat waves are no laughing matter. Weather is going to get hot in the summer, and hydration is very, very important. If you don't get enough hydration, it will be absolutely unbearable. I've learned that the hard way. So don't laugh off heat waves. I mean, you can argue about climate change, but heat waves, absolutely not. It's not worth it. It's not worth the risk. Even if people say that those two are the same thing, there's so much we can do within our own control. So yeah, stay safe and stay hydrated. Iran's president orders country to suspend cooperation with United Nations nuclear watchdog IA on Wednesday. Iran's president Masoud Pezeshkian approved a law passed by Parliament on June 25th to suspend cooperation with the IAEA, communicated that day, following US bombings of Iranian nuclear sites on June 22nd and Israeli strikes on June 13th. Iran suspending cooperation with the IAEA, citing retaliation and sovereignty concerns. IAEA chief Rafael Grossi stated Iran's 60% enrichment uranium stockpile, estimated that about 408 kilograms, is unaccounted for and its location remains unknown. Iran's parliament law blocks IAEA's inspectors until nuclear facility security is granted, hampering oversight without a set timetable. Beyond the standoff, Iran's suspension of IAEA cooperation raises doubts about nuclear diplomacy and threatens to withdraw from the nuclear non-proliferation, escalating global tensions. I'm not defending Iran's actions. I'm certainly not going to say that I'm not going to say that uranium is not dangerous. It certainly is, and I have said this many times. To say there's any other escalation going on, like nuclear weapons against another nation, that's why I left. That's why I leave the room. I've heard many talks. I've heard many stories about countries using nuclear warheads to coerce or threaten nations to do something, and they just don't do it. Not just because countries are going along with what their demands are, but if they go ahead with that, there are serious international complications and controversy that will go ahead with that comes with it, especially getting the international courts involved. I was going to say something about war crimes. That is just as bad. Another point is world leaders of nations, no matter how outlandish, how childish, and how immature they could possibly be, they know better not to use nuclear warheads. Now, they can still threaten with nuclear warheads because they have it, but they know better not to use them and detonate them in particular countries. Because the damage it will do and the death toll that it would establish, it's absolutely wild. You would be shocked how powerful these warheads are, knowing that if it were to happen, it would be devastating. But nonetheless, I'm not too worried about countries threatening other nations with warheads. Because even we know how powerful they are, they're not crazy enough to actually go ahead and detonate that or launch it to a particular country. Because they could get into trouble with that. There will be severe punishments and consequences for that. And knowing this, I'm not saying we can just relax. I'm not saying don't brush away any talks about using nuclear warheads, but just know that the odds of nations using such nuclear weapons is very, very unlikely. That is all. Kate Middleton described her cancer journey as both life-changing and a roller coaster, highlighting the importance of a holistic approach to healing. She explained that after treatment, there is a different phase where everyone expects recovery to be immediate. Middleton emphasized the challenge of finding a new normal after finding treatment, which takes time. She expressed that it is a roller coaster. It is not one smooth plane as one goes through hard times. You know what? She's right. I agree to that. It is not easy going through, or at least it's not easy being diagnosed with cancer, and there have been people who have passed away from that. It's very sad, but it happens, sadly. And thankfully, there are research advancements to ensure that no one will have to suffer what most people had to go through. So, good on Kate, getting through that, and hopefully, whoever goes through what has been, and for anyone else that may possibly go through the same thing, just know that there is a chance, there is hope that you get to live another day. And certainly way more days than that. Long dead satellite emits strong radio signal, puzzling astronomers. On June 13th, 2024, astronomers using ASCAP telescope in Australia detected a powerful fast radio burst from NASA's inactive Relay 2 satellite orbiting Earth about 4,500 kilometers away. The burst originated from the satellite's electrostatic discharge or possibly a micrometeorite impact, with static buildup on Relay 2's metal skin considered the main cause. Relay 2 launched in 1964, ceased operation by 1967 after its transponders failed, and remained in orbit as space debris until the unexpected burst. The radio burst lasted about 30 nanoseconds, with a 3 nanosecond main pulse at the detection limit, and astronomers noted that such electrostatic events could be common and hazardous to satellites. This observation highlights the need for care distinguishing satellite signals from cosmic sources, and suggesting further study could improve spacecraft protection against electrostatic discharges in orbit. Now, if the lads were here right now, they will have a lot to say about: can we escape the firmament? Can we explore outer space? Is space even real? You know? However, just based on the story alone, it's incredible. It is impressive. It's not easy making such technological advancements and for people to know about it. But I will say, I know in the past, we may not hear too much about anything space related in the next few years, but maybe when other events in the world start shaking up and there has to be something to talk about, possibly during a slow news day, we will hear more about what goes on in space and anything space related. So let's see what other advancements they come up with next and what else they can work on to ensure that it gives hope to the people that there is possibly life outside of Earth. But who knows? British Columbia launches working group to address safety in support of housing. The British Columbia government is exempting all supportive housing units from the regulations of the Residential Tenancy Act. Housing Minister Ravi Kalun stated that the aim of the working group is to ensure safety for tenants and workers. The working group will include law enforcement, supportive housing providers, union representatives, and British Columbia Housing. The ministry is collaborating with the British Columbia Centre for Disease Control to assess the toxic drug crisis impact on supportive housing. Well, I've got a few things to say. It's nice to see that there is effort to provide housing for all people, at least mostly for the residents, because they're going to need it, and there is safety to ensure there is safety in place. But this is only the beginning. There is so much more that can be done. We just won't know what it is until it's too late. But still, on a positive note, It's great to see British Columbia trying to get a grasp on housing in general and make sure that there's always a roof under someone's head. But still, there's still more work. There's still more work to be done. 4 employees in the company of Bavarian network operator stabbed down. Wow, that's awful. No one should go through that. 1 person was killed and 2 seriously injured by a man with a object at an electric utility company in south-central Germany on Tuesday, according to local police. A large contingent of rescue services were tending to the injured on the grounds of the Oberlandwerke Hoinen company, said police. 1 person had died at the scene, they said. The man, a 21-year-old German national, has already been taken into custody and there is no danger posed to the public, said police, who added that there are no indications of a political or terrorist motive. The spokesperson for Oberlandwerke Hoinen would not comment on the report and referred questions to the police. This is a developing story. So there's much more there is more that's just beyond what's already been said already. But no one should go through that. Why do people do this? Why people get sharp objects and jab into people's insides, or how else would I describe it? Why people have that tendency? What's the need to go out in public and take the jab out of someone? Do you hate the person? Are you jealous of living a better life than you are? Or is it simply because you're just bored and you're some diabolical human being and thought, oh, you know what, I'm just gonna go around and start jabbing people just for fun? That is just ridiculous. That is an outrage. That is an understatement. An outrage is an understatement there. There is no need to do that. No one should ever go through that. But hopefully, once they're caught, justice will be served. Hopefully. It's not guaranteed, but I hope in this case something does get done. Ford recalls over 200,000 vehicles in the United States due to a software defect causing rear view camera failures and increased crash risk. Ford notified US regulators on May 9th about a software defect causing rear-view camera freeze or blank screens, prompting a recall of over 200,000 vehicles. The recall affects N61 vehicles across various Ford and Lincoln models, with notification letters scheduled to be mailed by July 28th under recall number 25S72. Ford dealerships will update the rear-view camera software free of charge to address the defect and reduce crash risk, following the July 2nd recall of over 200,000 vehicles. Following May's recall of over 1 million vehicles, Ford's widespread software defects continue to prompt major recalls, including over 200,000 vehicles in July, reflecting a persistent safety trend. Oh boy. It's like Ford has a lot going on for them. And they really have to act fast. Okay, they don't have to act fast, but it would be beneficial, publicity-wise, if they do that. Wow, that's bad. That's really bad. And you know, there are people that actually rely on these rear-view cameras. What happened to the days when people just look behind their shoulders to check to see if they haven't hit something or not? People are becoming so reliant on technology that without said technology, people panic, saying, "Oh my gosh, what do we do? What do we do?" When the next call to action is so simple. They've just been too reliant on technology to even realize that. That is why I make sure that I think of something first before I even ask ChatGPT. Except I haven't asked ChatGPT something in over 2 years. Instead, I asked DeepSeek for my queries instead. However, yeah, technology. They may be handful and convenient, but at what cost? Don't make technology your best friend, because they can turn on you, and you will pay the price. Not the technology, you will pay the price. And that is scary concerning. So don't be a victim of technological fault. MPs voted on Wednesday in the House of Commons in London to prescribe Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation. The vote followed concerns over Palestine Action's increasingly aggressive attacks on arms firms and alleged links to white supremacist groups. The legislation passed by 385 votes to 26 calls for Home Secretary Yvette Cooper to sign the ban into law and sign the order to the House of Lords. If the legislation is approved, anyone joining or aiding Palestine Action could face up to 14 years behind bars, a move that MPs say may discourage protest activities. Legal action is underway to temporarily block the prescription, raising debate over national security and right to protest amid warnings from the United Nations and others. Now, I have something to say, but when I say it, there's going to be a few people that aren't going to be happy with it. And that's absolutely understandable. I can't argue with that. I will say this, I understand that whatever goes on in Gaza is an atrocity. No one in Gaza should have to live their lives as they are currently living their lives right now. And this is just for people living in Gaza. And whilst there are credits to be given to those people advocating to ensure that the violence stops, I do have concern that there are some people who take part in these protests. They can go a bit far. Not to say I'm defending the atrocities that are going on, but if you are speaking out about an issue going around the world, you got to make sure that more than just a message, there is also a long-term plan. And once you do have a plan, that there is a limit on how far you can go. If you go too far, then you'll get stories like this. You're going to have people in power saying, "Oh, don't support this organization. They're a terrorist group or something." Personally, I don't think it should have happened, but I understand why they're doing this. But just because something like this is happening, and there would be limitations in protest, that does not mean people should stop. But to keep it brief, keep speaking out about what goes on in this world. But of course, don't give people in power a reason to not support you. It may sound complicated. It may not sound right, but I'm trying to give a warning that no matter what happens, no matter how hard we try to speak out about devastations going on in the world that are beyond inhumane, do not stoop to their level. Never stoop to the level of the inhumane, ever. Chicago suburb where Pope Leo XIV grew up poised to buy his childhood home. Dalton officials voted to buy Pope Leo XIV's childhood home at 212 East 141st Street. First place before a planned auction, as voted unanimously by the village board. Mayor Jason House described the chance to buy the home as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Dalton's historic development. The purchase could allow Dalton to evaluate land zones and secure state and congressional funds to enhance the area's economic impact. Officials aim to make the home a historic site to attract visitors and boost the local economy. Actually, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. However, I have one thing to point out. What security measures are going to be in place? Because let me remind those who may not be aware, this is Pope Leo XIV. He is more than just a guy with a long white hat sitting in somewhere in St. Peter's Basilica in the middle of Rome in Italy. He is he's currently a global religious figure, so surely plans do go ahead to preserve Pope Leo the home. There will be tons there'll be a lot of Catholic people wanting to check his home out once it's up. And there has to be security measures, because I'm not saying it's all of them, but there will be a few that are very supportive that may go over the line to not cause damage, but to get hands on anything that closely resembles or anything personal to Pope Leo XIV. Not that such actions should be encouraged, but of course, again, he's a well-known religious figure across the world. So there's going to be millions of people that do want to go to the United States, in a neighborhood in Chicago, to look at his home. Because yeah, there's high interest, and there's likely to be loads of money to be generated into the local economy surrounding the home, and for Chicago too, because well, it's close to Chicago, so they're going to have to sort out public transport to get to and from the city and the home. So it's just something to think about when the time comes. Kazakhstan bans face coverings in public places. Kazakh President Kassym Jomart Tokayev signed a law prohibiting individuals from wearing clothing in public places that covers their faces, joining a trend in several Central Asian countries. The legislation does not explicitly mention religion, but effectively prohibits women from wearing burqas and niqabs in public. Tokayev believes this law provides an opportunity to celebrate ethnic identity in Kazakhstan, a majority Muslim country. Opponents argue that the trend of face coverings is a new import from Arabic countries, contrasting with Kazakhstan's historical practice where women did not cover their faces. I'm glad that they did not mention religion and all that, because that is a completely separate can of beans to open. And it's certainly a whole different hot pool of water to get into. I mean, all I can say is, if a woman wants to wear what they want to wear, then let them be. But of course, I don't think there is a need to conceal one's identity unless they're running away from a organization or running away from the authorities. But of course, I know that people do wear head coverings as part of their culture, but nonetheless, whatever comes out, there are customs and cultures that are followed through to the best of their ability, whilst at the same time, people continue to live, making the choice they want to make, without having to go through any consequences. Costa Rica's Supreme Court asked Congress to strip President Rodrigo Chavez of his immunity to face corruption charges over allegedly forcing a company to pay $32,000 to his friend. The court made this unprecedented request against the backdrop of a clash between the judiciary and the conservative president, who is accused of bribery. Chavez, a hardline populist leader, has voiced hope his party will win a supermajority in next year's elections to enable reforms, while routinely criticizing opposition parties, judges, and media. From what I'm hearing, money is the way to go. You gotta have connections, the influence, and the money. If you don't have all three, you're not getting anywhere in life. And of course, if you don't hide that well, you're going to get stories like that. They should not have happened to begin with. People may think there's a benefit to that. There's always going to be more downsides to it than most people would think. Hopefully, whatever this case is going on, I hope it does go ahead. And if it is the case that there was some kind of bribery involved, then yeah, there has to be a punishment. I get you want to support your close friends and family, but whilst in position of power, that's not a good look. I think people have to be smart about how they use their connections, the money, and the influence that they have. Because well, you're gonna get punishments like that potentially. Jeff Bezos sells $737 million worth of Amazon shares. Jeff Bezos sold 3,324,926 shares of Amazon worth approximately $737 million between June 27th and June 30th, 2025. The sale followed Bezos' adoption of a Rule 10b5-1 trading plan in March 2025, allowing pre-arranged stock sales up to May 29th, 2026. This stock offloading coincided with Bezos' lavish $50 million wedding to Lauren Sanchez in Venice, Italy, held over 3 days in sparking local protests. On June 27th, Bezos sold more than 3 million Amazon shares at an average price of $221.41 each, with the stock closing at $220.46 that day. Jeff Bezos continues to hold the biggest personal stake in Amazon, owning 905 million shares, and intends to sell up to 25 million shares as part of a plan to finance projects like Blue Origin. Well, well, well. The Bezos man is getting busy with his finances, and especially Blue Origin. I like to see how that goes, especially last time they sent a lot of well-known female celebrities in space, and so many reports have said, no, I don't think that was the case. I think it's a setup, they say. But all to their own, they say. All to their own. However, I am actually curious to see what happens next with Blue Origin, SpaceX, and of course NASA, to see how far they can go next into the stratosphere and break the firmament. Will there be footage of landing on the moon again? And also, will there be a colonization in Mars? Actually, I do want to see that, but I really, really doubt that's going to happen. That is very, very unlikely. But one can hope that such incidences and such events can happen in many decades to come. Major reports about how climate change affects the United States are removed from websites. The Trump administration removed the National Climate Assessment website, which provided information about climate change effects in the United States. Congress requires the federal government to publish the National Climate Assessment every 4 years, and the next edition was due in 2027. An archived version of the original website is available through the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine tool. Now, once again, I have something to say, but not a lot of people will like hearing this. You know, I'm actually all for that. Maybe it was a right call to remove the climate change website. Now, of course, there are natural disasters happening, and of course, the heat waves going around in the summer. We all have to pay attention to irregular weather patterns outside of our control. But when I hear climate change, I always refer back to the people in power saying, we have to do this by 2050, otherwise the icebergs will melt and the sea levels would rise. I don't have against giving an insight about what could happen if we don't do stuff, but the scale that people are making this out to be, it's just out of the box. And when people do look back on these, and at least, and especially beyond the timeline, they say when it happens, something will happen. There's barely much change, or not at all. But just because there are people that don't take climate change seriously, does not mean we can't do anything to help the environment. And this is the clear distinction I make. Caring for the environment and climate change are two separate things. The environment regards the plants, the trees, and the terrain that we live on. Climate change is regarding changes in weather, temperatures getting hotter and colder. that I have concerns about. But with the environment, I'm all for that. I'm all for protecting the environment, providing diverse ecosystems for the animals, because, like, what was life like millions of years ago, like before industrialization, and especially many years before we gone beyond hunter-gathering societies and agriculture, innovation. Same case I would make with the farmers. Although people give high taxes to farmers, they matter so much for how we live. Not just the food they produce, but also other resources coming from animals like wool from sheep, the milk from cows, and also goats for some reason. What else? The eggs from chickens, of course. Where would people be if we didn't have the chickens or the hens to lay the eggs? So, anything regarding the environment and agriculture and the farmers, I'm all for that. And hopefully, there is more that can be done to ensure that those topics are taken more seriously and people within those sectors do get the support they need to help progress with society more. And that is all, and that is it for the episode.